Welcome back to another edition of the Mindset Entrepreneur video podcast. Happy to have you with us today. I have a special guest, the owner and consultant of Trust Energy Solutions, Frank Collins.
Pleased to be here.
Frank,
thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Frank, I got to tell you, I was excited to have you on today because I think this happens to be an issue that is so significant, not just from our world, the environment of going green and caring about our environment. What I think is really significant is you're solving a lot of problems for companies, right? You're saving them money, you're helping them with green initiatives, so on and so forth. But before we get to any of that,
yes,
I want to know if you grew up when you were a little tyke, when you were in your 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, were you just sitting there like, you know what, I want to help companies with energy efficiency. Is that what you were thinking when you were a kid?
I know you say that kind of a joke, but actually it's sort of true because I've been an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid. I had business cards when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Going up and down Main Street, washing windows and doing odd jobs. But I grew up in kind of the boonies of Maine and running around in the woods and milking cows and I've just got environmentalism has always been very important to me. And so when I contemplated starting a business, I really wanted to do something on carbon footprint reduction. I looked at solar and I looked at various business models, but the energy efficiency business model seemed like it had so much more to offer, and that's kind of how I gravitated to it.
Well, so wait a minute though. Before we get to that, Frank, you got business cards at 9 years old. So let's go back to that. Was it influence from your parents, just kind of being entrepreneurial? Like, where did that entrepreneurial gene come from for you?
You know, I don't know, but I have always loved working, and I sold burpee seeds as a kid. To buy a BB gun. I mean, I have always just enjoyed working and solving problems. And to me, being a business owner is really about solving problems, not only for my own business, but for the clients. Every client is unique, and it's a thoughtful process that I really enjoy.
That's awesome. So let's give our viewers a little education 101 about what you do. So my first exposure, so we can give people like a attainable understanding, is my first exposure was an organization called Mass Save. They came to my house, and I remember I got a phone call one day, and they said, you know, how'd you like to save money and how'd you like to make your house more energy efficient? It's not going to cost you virtually anything.
Right.
And I said, well, I'd be crazy not to listen. I listened, they came, and I thought, what a great residential solution. Then I met you, and I said, Frank, what do you do? What is Trust Energy Solutions? And the simplest way, right, you're really the commercial solution.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes. Right.
So what is it when you encounter organizations, what are the opportunities that organizations are just missing the boat on, that at the risk are no-brainers, that you're looking at going, how are these organizations not taking advantage of this?
You know, that is a great question, actually. I would say there are several, actually. In this industry, especially when you're talking commercial, industrial, municipal, lighting is a big converting to LED lighting is kind of everybody's very familiar with that. But in Massachusetts, we're fortunate that energy supply is deregulated. So you're allowed to pick your own energy supply partner. And a lot of businesses have taken advantage of this, but I still see about half the businesses haven't taken advantage of it. That's a very simple way to very quickly chop 10 or 15% off of your electric bill.
Oh, wait, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Do you think most businesses are aware they can choose their energy supply partner? I wonder.
I would say it's about 50-50.
Okay.
Are say about, yeah.
So is that, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I want to educate the audience. So is that the kind of thing where if you are not aware of that, and if you haven't shopped that around, that alone you could be losing money?
Yeah, and I would say there's a decent amount of familiarity with that program. The piece that's really going unused is access to solar credit. So you see these big solar farms all over the place. A few years ago, they started allowing these solar farms to sell the credits that they generate to businesses and to residents, for that matter, and they can do that at a discount. So it's a very simple way to get another 10 to 15% immediately off your electric bill by signing up with one of these solar farms.
Frank, I got to tell you, as a small business owner myself, I'm listening to this and it makes sense, but you know how busy I am? Like when I think of entertaining these things, I mean, yeah, sure, I probably could save money and help the environment and stuff, but why should this be a priority for me amidst all the other things I'm contending with as a small business owner?
That, I think, is the question, honestly. I think my experience from working with hundreds of business owners is that most business owners are very focused on top-line revenue growth, all right? Sales, 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 got to increase sales. The challenge with that is that's a difficult thing to do. You can raise your prices, you can spend a bunch of money on promotion, you can go out and do newspaper ads, you can hire salespeople. There are various ways to increase your top line. My argument is that reducing your cost basis, whatever that is, forget about energy efficiency, but cost reduction methods are much more time proven, they're much more deterministic, and if we're able to save a company $20,000 on their electric bill every year, and they're at a 10% profit margin, well, guess what? They just increased their sales by $200,000 a year for the next 15 years.
So it doesn't matter where the money comes from as long as it comes from somewhere, right?
Exactly. It's how you look at it.
So Frank, you know, in preparation for this interview today, I talked to a few of your customers, and you know, it seems that when you invest in your business, you're also creating a better working environment for your personnel. So whether it's you know, better energy efficiency, improved lighting in a warehouse or a facility, could you talk a little bit about, from a company culture point of view, because I don't think most people would think energy efficiency, how the heck does that help company culture? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's great. In fact, when I started this business 4+ years ago, one of the very first things I noticed is that the entire conversation was around saving money, which is important. Obviously, we're all in business to make money. But in my humble opinion, the saving of the money, that's the tip of the iceberg. The real value of going green is the fact that you've gone green. And the platform that gives you to communicate with all of your shareholders, whether that's your local city officials who love having their picture taken with anything associated with green, whether that's your local trade press who loves to write about it, whether that's your existing clients who want to know you're a company that cares. Maybe it's something you can fold into your bidding process, which is increasingly a question, what is your sustainability program and bidding process? So you can fold it in there. We've actually developed a suite of tools and pre-written materials that a company can use. They simply brand it with their name, pre-written press releases, pre-written blogs.
Like a marketing kit of sorts?
It's a marketing kit, a green marketing kit that they can use to promote the fact that they're a company that cares.
So Frank, you know, you bring up something really interesting. You know, a lot of companies really struggle to differentiate their offerings, right? And so you're talking about using that green advantage. So not only is it an advantage for the company, but you're coming in and saying, look, we're going to actually give you the kit to help exploit that advantage.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's pretty significant, because if you came in and told me, well, it's nice, you can go green, I mean, I would agree and get it, but if you're giving me the tools out of the box to just go utilize them, that's a differentiator in itself, it would seem.
Yes, the challenge for business owners, though, I think they see that as an extra task, you know, and they're busy, their hair's on fire with 3 other things. Marketing is one of those things that can wait till tomorrow kind of thing. But I will tell you, when we do engage with a customer who partners with us on that effort, on that post-install green marketing effort, we've done some really fantastic things, like we've done green ribbon cuttings all right? Well, we'll get city officials to come in. We've done weekend events with food and music and 10% off the products this weekend in celebration of our green. And in that process, we've helped customers set up loyalty programs and capture email addresses and set up Facebook pages to promote themselves. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it, but you got to get started.
Well, so you're making me think about something for a second. So when I worked residentially with Mass Save, I mean, they came in, provided a service, and they left.
Right.
Where in your case, it seems like you're much more comprehensive than that, where you're really educating customers, where you're not just saving them money and helping them go green, you're really giving them an education on the best way to take advantage of a lot of these things.
Yes. More specifically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to be a long-term partner with our customers. We don't want to be transactional. We don't want to just get in there and swap their lights out or install some HVAC controls and never talk to them again. We want to be their long-term partner, because when a customer engages us on that level and starts talking to us about the green marketing, now they start telling us about how they acquire customers, how they achieve their sales goals, etc. And when we understand that, then we can really help them, because there are a lot more tools than LED lighting, but the customer's got to be willing to work with us to develop some of these other avenues towards savings.
So Frank, are there a lot of companies out there that do what you do?
I have yet to see anyone that's nearly this comprehensive. I would say 90+% of the energy efficiency folks out there are really focused on the lighting, because it's the simplest, lowest hanging fruit to do, generally speaking. But we've consciously taken a whole building approach, a long-term customer engagement approach, and because it's our belief that if we engage them like that, they're more likely to refer us to other businesses, and so far it's been working really well.
So let's say there's a handful of small business owners out there watching this podcast, and they're sitting there saying to themselves, geez, I've been meaning to look into this. Could you provide, with your expertise in the industry, what would be, finish this sentence, if you're a small business owner and you're considering looking into an energy efficiency solution, make sure you do blank, blank, and blank before you pick the right solution. What would be the best practices that they should be considering?
That's a great question. Actually, that'd be a good blog. I should put a blog together like that. But well, I think first thing I would look for. A lot of the energy efficiency companies have become sort of factories, if I may,
okay.
and they're volume based, and so they come, they very quickly they do very simplistic audits of your building, and they're really focused on just the low hanging fruit. So I would look for a vendor who's going to come in and do a more thorough audit and propose more than just lighting, for your application. So that's number one. And then number two, I think the biggest complaint that I hear from customers is crummy communication. All right. So the sales guy comes in and it all sounds good. They sign up, but then the communication disappears. All right. So during the audit process, during the install process, they can't. They don't get heads up when the install is going to begin. If there's an issue during install, nobody's talking to them, and a lot of the complaints center around post-install support. Maybe something went a little haywire or something, and they need some support, and they struggle to get somebody to come in and handle that. So I would look for a company that is very focused on communication, and you can test that by checking their references, or better yet, ask them to take you into a site where they've already done an install.
That seems like really good advice. So, Frank, a couple of thoughts on what you just said. So first of all, in business, I think one of the things that happens is people get snake bitten. They've either worked with another vendor, they've explored another solution, and something bad happened. And I call it the shoe bomber effect.
The shoe bomber.
And the shoe bomber effect is because one guy went into an airport with a bomb on his shoe, we're now going to be taking off shoes for the rest of our life in the airport.
Right.
So everybody overreacts.
Fair enough.
Okay. So to me, whenever people talk to me about this, you know what advice I give them? I say, instead of wallowing in, boy, I better never do that again, examine why the mistake happened in the first place and what are you going to do differently from a due diligence or education perspective to make sure you don't make that same mistake.
Fair enough.
So do you run into that and would you give the same advice or do you have different advice you could give business owners who feel that way?
I don't think it really changes my earlier response. I think that if I'm a business, I am a business owner, okay, and I get solicited by people. I always insist on talking to other customers of that service or product first. I want to hear firsthand what was their experience with it. Because in my opinion, the salesperson could say whatever they want, but generally speaking, existing customers are going to be the most reliable source of trustworthy information about that vendor. How did they do? How was the communication? You know, what was your experience like?
Now let me play devil's advocate with you for a minute. So when people make referrals or act as references,
Sure.
One of the challenges I think is if I said to you, Frank, geez, do you have a good pediatrician you can recommend in the area? Well, you might love your pediatrician, but you might expect and want different things of your pediatrician than I want out of mine.
Fair enough.
So what I would ask you is to elaborate on what you just said is that if you're checking references or going to site facilities,
Yep.
What do you think are the 2 or 3 things that should be universally asked and checked to make sure that the solution's right for them? It's a good fit for them from a previous customer experience.
It's a short list. Communication, how was it? Did they do what they said? Number 2 is, did you achieve the savings that were promised? And number 3, how did the products perform? How did your site end up when all was said and done? And if you get good answers to those 3 questions, I think you're in pretty good shape.
Okay. Now, Frank, you talked earlier about some of the obstacles, right? So there's cost reduction. There's the Going Green initiative benefit for small business. But we still have this, how do we get this issue to the top of a business owner's list? And so I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about everybody's focused on growth, right? That's the big core. How do you pull on those growth heartstrings? And I think one of the challenges for an organization like yours, and I would love to hear your thoughts, are how do you demonstrate that trust? You know, when you get in front of, I know you to be a trustworthy, honorable person, but for someone that doesn't know you, yes, you can give references, but is that a struggle for you to get people comfortable, not because of anything about you, but just because people are paranoid or
Absolutely.
or doubting?
Well, you called it shoe bomber effect. I call it vendor fatigue. I think most business owners get hammered by folks promising this and that, and after a while, they just get sort of worn out. And so, yeah, I think establishing trust is the hardest thing to do with very skeptical business owners. But one of the things I would say is that at least the way the rebate programs work in Massachusetts is the business owners actually have a backup plan, because when we get rebates for customers for the energy efficiency work, the utilities will always come out and do their own audit, both before they issue the rebate to us and then after we do the install, to make sure that we installed everything that we said. So the business owner gets a second set of independent eyes on the situation, and they're not just relying on our word.
Wow. So it's almost like a built-in insurance policy.
It really is, and it's like that on purpose, because years ago there were some issues with some maybe not so great energy efficiency folks, and so they established that process, and it works very well now.
So let's talk about the rebate piece, because we really haven't spent much time on that. Let me ask you, as far as the rebate piece goes, when you say these businesses save money, is this a savings they recognize immediately? Does it happen over time? Talk about the different options and how businesses do recognize that savings.
Fair enough. It depends on the measures that we're employing. I mean, some measures pay back over time, some are immediate. So again, if we're looking at reducing electric rates or accessing solar credits, those savings kick in immediately with no out-of-pocket cost. If you're looking at retrofitting your building with LED lights or building management controls or maybe some refrigeration retrofits, those will pay back over time. So in that scenario, we work with the utilities, and there's like 10, 11 different rebate programs, and depending on what your situation is, the size of your business, where you're located, which utility we're talking about, we'll determine the best rebate program. And typically, you're getting about 40 to 70 cents on the dollar free rebate money, and then you're responsible for paying the remainder.
And the same question related to upfront costs. How are companies able to defer some of those or all of the upfront costs? Are there multiple options there as well?
Oh, sure. There are standard financing programs to, I would say 95% of the installs that we do have no upfront cost.
Wow.
And if the idea is that if I lower your electric bill by $2,000 a month, and the finance cost for the non-rebate amount is, say, $1,000 a month, well, no money down, you're cash flow positive on day one. The math works really well, especially for businesses with extended hours of operation. I tell you, like hotels, manufacturing, parking garages, large retail spaces that are open on the weekends and stuff, those long hours of operation make these installs very cash flow positive immediately.
Frank, let's shift gears for a second. I know a lot of organizations bring you in as a speaker because you're a trusted expert in your field. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some general topics you speak about and how you're educating people in the region about the importance of energy efficiency?
Sure. You know, it's funny, when I speak at conferences or trade organizations, generally I don't talk so much about energy efficiency itself as I do about how there are really only three main ways to improve profitability. Again, you can raise your prices, you can increase your sales, or you can decrease your cost. That's it. Those are the only three ways. And usually when I speak, I talk about the fact that cost reduction is by far the most predictable way and time-proven way to do that. And then I'll talk to them a little bit about, you know, how in Massachusetts we're fortunate that we are the #1 state in the United States for mandated energy efficiency, and because of that, we've got some really aggressive rebates that help pay for all of these cost reduction efforts.
Frank, I know that your integrity is very important to you, and you know you're an active husband, father. You're involved in youth sports. You're extremely involved in the Marlboro community, Chamber of Commerce, so on and so forth. Talk to me a little bit about, you know, when you look as your life has evolved, why integrity and reputation is so important to you, and why you take that so seriously.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean,
that's why they pay me the small bucks, Frank.
Yeah. Well, my office is right on Main Street. I've lived in Marlboro for 35 years. I have to be able to walk down the street or go into the grocery store and look these people in the eyes. A lot of my clients have become lifetime friends. And so we're in it for the long haul. I'd like to think that we do it the right way. I'm fond of saying we do it the right way even when nobody's looking, you know. And I just find over and over again, my personal experience anyways has been with vendors that work with me, is when I see somebody do business like that, I trust them. And when I trust them, that's when I'm going to work with them more. And it's a philosophy. I found that it works well.
There's a couple of points I want to bring up to what you're talking about right now. You know, when you talk about big business versus small business, and when you talk about service and the communication process. And you said something that's very important. You know, you're active in the community. You're on Main Street in Marlboro. What that means to me is if you're dealing with customers in the region, you can't hide. If there is a bad experience, there's nowhere for you to hide as a prominent member of the community. Whereas if you're dealing with a bigger company and you have that bad experience, there's really not a name that really has to deal with. And so I think that as a small business owner, I don't care what solution you choose, but when you're dealing with a company that has a reputation and is prominent in the community, I think that's really significant.
Yeah, one thing that we do that I think is pretty unique in the business is that the same person who manages the audit and manages the upgrade to your building is going to be the same person that you're going to have servicing you should you have an issue afterwards. And it may sound like a small thing, but I'm telling you, it's really big. These installs can sometimes be a bit involved, and it's important that when something goes wrong, that same person who knows your site is the same person. So you're going to have the cell phone number of the person who did the install, and I think at a lot of companies that's just not the case.
Well, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Frank, let's talk about a great customer match for you. And I don't mean in terms of pain centers and needs. I mean, when you meet someone, you have chemistry with a customer, and you genuinely know you can help them, what are some qualities or core values of that customer where you're like, oh, that's a great fit for us?
Absolutely. Well, generally we're looking for businesses that are about 10,000 square feet or larger, and ideally with longer hours of operation, like hotels and manufacturing and distribution centers and larger retail, parking garages, etc. But really, within that sphere, what we really look for are customers who run a tight ship and who understand their numbers. And what I mean by that is they understand how to evaluate a proposal. Because in my experience, when we get that kind of customer, they understand the difference between payback and cash flow, and we can talk to them about different options about how to finance it the right way to optimize the financials for their particular business situation.
Frank, I know one of the reasons that this business has really grown for you and you've been successful is because I know the energy costs in Massachusetts, I believe, are the highest in the nation, correct?
Yes.
So I want to start by asking you something really simple. For every company out there, how does a company, if they don't know you, or if they don't know any solutions like you, how do they do an internal audit to assess? Is that even available? Would companies even know how to do that? Because before we even talk about utilizing a solution, do companies even have the tools and wherewithal to recognize the additional money they're spending? Do they even know how or have those tools?
I think some yes, some no. I think as you work with the SMB, small medium-sized businesses, it's less common to find that they have those kinds of tools to analyze, the options available. As you get into the larger companies, we're dealing with some very large companies and chains. Those kinds of companies have folks dedicated to analyzing that, analyzing payback and return, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but even in some of the larger companies, we find that it's difficult for them to get their mind a little bit around how to analyze. So what we have done for some of these companies, we've done post-install measurement and verification studies. Mm-hmm. So there's often some skepticism about, what am I going to save? What you're saying I'm going to save, and so we can sub-meter the site, measure it before, measure it afterwards, and prove that they're actually saving what we said.
So have you ever approached a company that doesn't have the tools, isn't doing it, where you've offered, because the audit is free?
Yes.
So have you ever approached a company and they said, no, we're not interested in even getting an audit?
No, that's generally if they take the time to sit down with us, they're going to proceed to the audit because it's
It's a no-brainer.
It's generally free. It depends. If there are rare exceptions, but no, I think what happens, the biggest obstacle that we have is that we come back with a proposal and we say, okay, it's going to cost this much, we're going to get this much rebate, and it'll take 2.3 years to pay back. And the biggest obstacle is that business owner doesn't necessarily live in our space, so it's hard for them. They have to trust us that the savings are going to materialize, because if the savings don't materialize, then all of these financials that I'm putting in front of them aren't going to come true.
But I thought they do, and they don't have to trust you, because doesn't the built-in insurance policy kind of protect them?
To a degree, but again, I'm telling you that these business owners have been burned, and they're once bitten, twice shy, and so
They're still skeptical.
they're still skeptical.
Okay.
And well, okay, I will tell you, I've even had customers say, sure, you've got the utility coming in behind you to validate all of this, but what kind of handshake deal is going on between you and the utility, you know? And it really isn't like that. It's completely arm's length and independent. So, but regardless, I think it all comes down to the business owner believing or not believing the savings. Because if they believe the savings, this whole program's a no-brainer.
Agreed. And part of the challenge is, like I said earlier, is the education element, because I know there's at least 10 rebate programs out there. So that would be overwhelming in itself. And that's where the consulting education
Exactly.
element of what you do becomes very critical.
Yep.
So let's talk about industries that are best fit for what you're doing. I'm sure there's multiple industries, but maybe you could share an example of one that really has seen a big success story.
Sure. Continuing on the theme of longer hours of operation, manufacturing, hotels, these are two areas where we've done a lot of work. And manufacturers in particular need better lighting for their machine shop operators, and the fixtures are often difficult to maintain over the machines. So the LEDs last 3 to 5 times longer, produce better quality light when you're trying to inspect pieces that you're working on. The hotels, with their common areas at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, the paybacks are really quick in there. What's critical to hotels is curb appeal. If they want to get good Yelp reviews, that place has got to look sharp, and the LED lighting really makes their facility pop.
My last question, Frank, before we wrap up is, we've talked a lot about the LED lights, and it seems like that's the one area that most people have some general education and knowledge of. So I would imagine you run into, people just want a quick fix or a simple solution, but there is an investment of time, right, from the business owner or from the personnel that you're doing with. So could you give people kind of a bird's eye view of what that investment is? Is it a lot of time? Is it a little time? What should they prepare for if they're going to embark on this?
Well, I think it's a great question, because I think it's probably one of the main barriers to doing business for them, is because it sounds a little complicated and it sounds like a lot to do, and so it's one of those things that I'll do tomorrow kind of thing. In reality, most engagements entail 3 meetings, usually about 45 minutes each. There's a pre-assessment meeting, then we'll come in and do the audit, and then we'll come back with the proposal. And after those 3 meetings, the business owner is done. I mean, we take care of all the paperwork with the utilities. There's nothing really much that they have to do. I mean, they'll have to provide some oversight when we're doing the installation, but we have project managers that take care of everything.
So let me just ask, Frank, I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. So from a time you spend meeting with the customer, from the educational aspect of what you do, the proposal, putting the proposal together, the driving to the meetings, you could be investing upwards of 10 hours with the prospective customer and have nothing to show for it.
Well, often more for larger sites, could be 30, 40, 50 hours.
So I'm thinking as a small business owner, I mean, from an integrity and trust point of view, but when you have to make that kind of investment up front, boy, you better be invested in the customer, because that's a pretty big...
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Okay, so Frank Collins, owner consultant for Trust Energy Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Very informative.
It was my pleasure.
Nice having
Thank
you.
you for having me.
Thank you all for another edition of the Mindset Entrepreneur video podcast. We look forward to seeing you again next week.